John Solomon crystal ball. Where is this going, John Solomon? Help me out. I need information.
Yeah, I'm going to put a circle around a couple of names that I think are going to be very, very important in the next few weeks. I think Rob Walker, a business partner of a family friend of Joe Biden and a business partner of Hunter Biden. He is one of the most important witnesses that I think will emerge in the next few weeks. Why is that? When he was being interviewed by the FBI at the beginning of the Hunter Biden case, he said two very dramatic things. One, yes, Joe Biden did meet with Chinese officials, Chinese energy officials with CEFC China Energy. That's the company that gave $9 million to Biden family entities in 2017 alone. That Joe Biden met with him after he had left the vice presidency before he became president. So in the period where he was a private citizen, that of course undercuts Joe Biden's claim that he never met with any of Hunter Biden's business partners. But then they asked him a follow-up question. The FBI agents did. What's interesting is this comment is not reflected in the FBI interview report, but it's in the actual transcript, the recording of the interview. They said, did Joe Biden ever meet with CFC officials while he was vice president? Rob Walker answered, yes. The FBI moved on, did not follow up. Just think about that for a second. If Rob Walker's story stands, Joe Biden was meeting while he was vice president with the very company that ended up paying his family entities $9 million right after he gets out. The theory of all of this is that both prosecutors back in 2019, 2021, and Congress right now believe that Joe Biden may have allowed his family to do all this lobbying work for China while he was vice president and then simply defer the payment until after Joe Biden left the presidency so it wouldn't raise suspicions or ethics questions in the public's mind. That is a big area of inquiry. Otherwise, that it's another piece of evidence of just how often Joe Biden has misled the American public all the way through the 2020 election. And since, remember, just a couple of weeks ago, he continued to insist, I never met with Hunter Biden's business partners. That's a lie. He said there is overwhelming, irrefutable evidence that he met with business partners multiple times.
But John, you know, my esteemed colleague David Brody had two interviews this week with presidential hopefuls, I guess you could say, although I don't think there's much hope for them. But these were some big interviews, and these are some people who are bona fide in the GOP area, right? Like, these people shouldn't be denying that there's evidence. They are still denying it. The media is still denying that there's evidence. If you look on social media, everyone out there, it seems like, except for MAGA, and I'm talking about the heart of MAGA, seems to really still be denying that there's evidence. It seems to me, John, and I'm not an attorney, but I am a researcher, and I can tell you, from what I understand about data and research and evidence, there is not just a little bit of evidence. There is a lot of evidence. What do we need to do, John, to convince media and the GOP that there's evidence?
Well, listen, you saw Lindsey Graham say it over the weekend. You saw Senator Chuck Grassley, who was involved in the early investigation of Joe Biden, say this. It means that the House Republicans who have this evidence have to do a better job of telling the story. This is complex stuff, right? A transaction here, 5 LLCs there, a loan there, a repayment here. They need to boil this down into simple terms that the American public and their colleagues in the Senate and on the campaign trail can understand. Now, listen, it's in Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis and others might, not to give any sympathy to Donald Trump right now. I think if they weren't on the campaign trail and they really looked at this, they'd say, well, now I see what's going on. But this is the questions that I think James Comer and Jordan have to ask. Do we want a man in the White House who's lied his way into the presidency? He made 6 seminal statements that have proven to be false. Do we want a man in the White House who actually used the intelligence community to falsely suggest that Hunter Biden's laptop was Russian disinformation, wasn't real, just so he could have a talking point at a debate? Do we really want a president who, since he became president, continues to lie about what went on? Do we really want a man as president who actually met so many times with Hunter Biden's business partners, he facilitated a multi-million-dollar influence peddling operation that enriched his family? And do we really want a president who engaged in the same conduct that a federal judge that Adam Schiff helped impeach in 2009 also engaged in and was impeached for? Remember, there's a federal judge out of New Orleans who was impeached in 2009 the lead impeachment manager was Adam Schiff himself. This judge had allowed gifts to go to his family at a wedding from parties that were in a case. That was grounds for impeachment. Joe Biden met and facilitated Hunter Biden's money, and it went to Hunter Biden and his family. The conduct is very similar. Those are the sort of things that House Republicans ought to be telling the story about. They need to do a better job of making the story understandable. They've got the evidence. They don't have a very good narrative.
John, Terence, Terence here. I'm sorry.
Terence, sorry.
Follow me into the weeds just a little bit, if you will. So
Sure.
a lot of House Republicans are saying they expect this impeachment inquiry to last a couple of months, and they expect that actual articles of impeachment will be filed and voted on by, say, the spring. Now, the fact that this impeachment inquiry is official basically means that they have more teeth to their subpoenas. They can really go into the courts and force people to come forward and testify. That sounds to me, though, like that's going to be a pretty lengthy process, particularly if someone fights some of the subpoenas. So do you think it's realistic that this process is going to be done and we can actually have articles of impeachment and votes by the spring? Is that realistic?
It really depends on how quickly the courts move. Remember, the courts moved very quickly during the January 6th investigation. There were lots of rulings in May, June, July of 2022 that very quickly imposed requirements on witnesses to cooperate. If the courts move just as quickly, yes, the House can pull this off in enough time. If not, if they drag it out, another likely scenario is that the House introduces articles of impeachment and says, we trust the American people to be the ultimate jury. This is what we believe Joe Biden did. Here's what we don't know because these witnesses are obstructing us. We're going to trust you, the American people, to make the right decision. That is a fallback position for House Republicans that, by the way, may be very popular with the American public. Maybe not the base of the Republican Party, but it may be the public, which is, hey, you guys found the evidence and you think we're smart enough to make a judgment. That could be a fallback position. I think there's going to be some additional bombshell revelations, the sort of smoking gun that Senator Lindsey Graham was complaining he didn't have over the weekend. I think there's going to be some witnesses that come forward in January on Ukraine, some witnesses that come forward in January, February on China, and we're going to get much more clarity and specificity about what Joe Biden did and how he benefited. And also, I think there's a cache of documents that Republicans just got a hold of. They're Devin Archer's original documents before he was indicted. They include information that is not on Hunter Biden's laptop, that is frozen in time, contemporaneous evidence of what Joe knew, what Hunter knew, and what they were doing back in 14, 15, and 16 when this all began.